Welcome to the AC 24/7 Top Story Countdown. We'll guide you through the biggest news of the day. Our focus, advocating our rights, advocating health, and advocating Earth. Here's our pick for number 4.
They were cultural treasures and hubs of the community in Gaza. Now they lay in ruins. Like Palmyra in Syria or the ancient city of Nimrud in Iraq, victims of war. These pictures show the St. Porphyrius Church, one of the oldest in the world, before Israel's assault began 3 months ago. This is what it looks like now, after an Israeli airstrike in October.
What's the reason? Why? We asking from God to bring the peace in the area. Our roots are here. We are here 2,000 years, and we are not going to leave. We'll stay here. We'll continue our life.
The church's father, Habib Silas, says 17 people died in the strike on the compound where people were taking shelter. Israel says it was, quote, collateral damage and wasn't the intended target. But it's not the only historic site to have been destroyed. The Grand Mosque in Gaza has history that is said to date back to the time of the Philistines and has spent time as both a temple and a church before becoming a mosque. Today, all that remains standing is the minaret. Its library, with historic manuscripts, largely lost.
The mosque itself, we can say it's a symbol of the people and it's a symbol of the daily cultural life in Gaza. So unfortunately, with this loss, the people in Gaza, they lost a very important symbol of their identity and of their, as well, city.
And it's not just places of worship. This bathhouse, said to have been built in the 14th century, has been in the hands of the same family for generations. Destroyed in an instant. The Israeli military saying it was targeting a Hamas terrorist squad. Whenever this war ends and reconstruction begins, one thing is for sure. So much of Gaza's history now lies in rubble.
TheAdvocateChannel.com looks at the world through the lens of equality and inclusion. Subscribe, like, and share now. AC 24/7's Top Story Countdown continues with our producer's pick for number 3.
Christian Ziegler's fate as chair of the Republican Party of Florida is no longer in doubt.
He needs to move on. He needs to resign.
On Monday, party officials will move to officially oust him. GOP leaders, including Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, wanted Ziegler out long before this week's revelation that Ziegler may have secretly recorded a sexual encounter with a woman, accusing him of rape. According to a new search warrant affidavit, investigators are looking into that claim in the latest chapter of this ongoing sex scandal. Ziegler, who claims the sex was consensual, showed detectives a 2.5-minute-long video of the October 2nd sexual encounter. The affidavit states, quote, the victim did not give Ziegler consent to take this video. Neither Ziegler's wife or the victim knew anything about this video. The affidavit also says Ziegler's lawyer told investigators that the woman, who'd had a previous 3-way sexual encounter with Ziegler and his wife Bridget, asked Ziegler about the video in a message on Instagram. Investigators want access to that IG account, according to court documents. Christian Ziegler maintains his innocence and has refused to resign. He has not been charged criminally in the case. But last month, party officials removed him of all his duties and reduced his salary to just $1.
You cannot lead the Republican Party with the charges that are standing in front of him and the admissions he's made in the affidavits. You cannot morally lead the Republican Party forward.
Bridget Ziegler, who co-founded the conservative group Moms for Liberty, hasn't been accused of any criminal wrongdoing. Since the scandal broke, she parted ways with the conservative nonprofit Leadership Institute, but has held on to her school board seat in Sarasota County, even after fellow board members called on her to resign, telling her the sex scandal is a distraction.
It's not about the left, it's not about the right, it's about students.
Bridget Ziegler, a close ally of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, advocated for Florida's parental rights and education law, dubbed by critics as the Don't Say Gay bill. It removed discussion of sexual orientation and identity from public schools' curriculum. Some parents and LGBTQ activists accuse the couple of hypocrisy.
The hypocrisy comes from their relentless attacks on LGBTQ people, their public disparaging of our families and our communities, while they themselves were simultaneously living this private life. The hypocrisy is just stunning.
Like the Advocate channel on Facebook for the best way to get updates on stories that advocate for equality, justice, our rights, and more. AC 24/7 continues with today's top 2 pick.
All eyes are now on Iowa.
Haley, DeSantis, Ramaswamy, and Trump all converged on Iowa over the weekend.
Now's the time to be active. Now's the time where you guys can make a difference.
With just 1 week remaining before the Iowa caucus, the GOP candidates are pouring millions of dollars into the first voting state, flooding the airwaves in an attempt to challenge former President Trump's considerable lead in the polls.
You know, backstage, they say to me sometimes, "Sir, don't tell them that they're going to vote for you. That sounds so demeaning." I said, "I got them $28 billion for their farmers. Of course they're going to vote."
DeSantis and Haley could not avoid speaking about the frontrunner.
I think if we're relitigating the past elections, if it's about, Donald Trump or his legal issues or criminal trials or all that stuff, I think it's going to be a really nasty election. I don't think that puts Republicans in a good position to win.
He was really good at breaking things. He just wasn't good at fixing them.
Trump is looking for a decisive victory in the Hawkeye state after losing the Iowa caucus back in 2016. However, Iowans are split on who they'll support.
I think it's hardly likely that Trump will come out first.
I'll be voting for DeSantis.
I would like to see Vivek Ramaswamy be in the race as long as he can be.
Trump held a rally in Iowa on the 3rd anniversary of the January 6th Capitol attack, during which he gave his support for those jailed for their actions that day.
They ought to release the J6 hostages. They've suffered enough.
And raised eyebrows when he made this comment about the Civil War.
They could have been negotiated and they wouldn't have had that problem, but it was a hell of a time.
This week, the former president will be toggling back and forth from the campaign trail to the courtroom with a jam-packed schedule. On Tuesday, he will be in a D.C. courtroom where opening arguments will be held on his immunity claim. On Wednesday, he will be back in Iowa for a town hall event. And on Thursday, he will be in a New York City courtroom where the closing arguments in the civil fraud case against him, his sons, and the Trump Organization will begin.
Follow the Advocate channel on Twitter and Instagram to stay updated on stories that matter every day. Here's our #1 story of the day. Take a look.
Shock and terror on board Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 Friday night after part of the fuselage blew off shortly after takeoff.
Alaska, trouble to declare an emergency. We're descending down to 10,000.
Passengers reported a boy's shirt was ripped off his torso and out through the gaping hole in the jet.
I guess a boy and his mother were sitting in that row, and his shirt was sucked off him and out of the plane, and his mother was holding onto him. And she said her own little boy's phone went out, too.
The airline says the plane took off from Portland, Oregon, bound for Ontario, California, with 171 passengers and 6 crew members on board. The flight reached 16,000 feet after takeoff when the panel, including a window, ripped off.
Typical flight, took off. Pilot came on, said, "Oh, we're crossing 10,000 feet. Keep your seatbelts on for a while yet." And shortly after that, you heard a big loud bang to the left rear. We were like in row 20.
I woke up to the plane just falling, and I knew it was not just normal turbulence because the masks came down, and that's when the panic definitely started to set in.
The pilot was able to safely return to the airport and land the plane with no major injuries reported. A team from the National Transportation Safety Board is now investigating the incident. And Alaska Airlines announced it was temporarily grounding their entire fleet of Boeing 737-9 MAX planes. The Federal Aviation Administration also ordered the temporary grounding of the model of plane involved. I'm Rick Damigella reporting.